All right. Halito, my name is Melissa McGee, and I am an enrolled member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I'm a new staff member here at the Capacity Building Center for Tribes. I recently joined the team in December as a product development specialist for tribal child welfare products. So I'm still getting acclimated. I'm also in Maine at this time, visiting the campus. So I'm happy to be joining you today from Maine. As Sarah mentioned, in addition to working for the Center for Tribes, I'm also starting my second year as Tribal Fellow for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You'll hear me refer to it throughout the webinar today as NCMEC because we all love our acronyms, and sometimes just as the National Center. Both of my roles are 100% remote, so I actually live and work in Southeast Oklahoma within the reservation boundaries of the Choctaw Nation. A little bit about my professional background. Before coming to work here at the Center for Tribes, I spent 8.5 years with Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma as an Indian child welfare worker and then supervisor. So I'm a qualified expert witness for my tribe. Prior to that, I was with the state of Oklahoma Department of Human Services for 17.5 years. My years there, I was a child welfare specialist and certified as a child sexual abuse specialist, and then also spent some time working in family support services when I took some time away from child welfare for a time. Prior to that, I was with the Eastern Oklahoma Youth Services doing intensive in-home social work. So basically a career of almost 30 years now, all in social work, but heavily geared towards child welfare, all of that. Currently serving as the secretary for the Oklahoma Indian Child Welfare Association and previously participated in the Tulsa County ICWA Court Council and on the McCurtain County multidisciplinary team. Outside of work, I enjoy being a wife and a mom and a mamaw. So I appreciate the opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about what we have to offer at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I will say that we're going to move very quickly through the presentation today. Normally, this presentation takes about an hour and a half, and so I've trimmed that down to hopefully about 45 minutes. But I do want to make you aware that it's going to be very fast paced. I do have some time at the end, though, so we can have some discussion and I can answer any questions that you have. Before we begin, normally we don't encourage recording and we don't share our PowerPoint presentation. There's a couple of reasons for that, but I do know that this webinar is being recorded and it will live on the YouTube channel. So with that in mind, I just want to give a couple of quick disclaimers. All of the information, all of the data that I'm presenting today is going to be a snapshot in time. And then also, if there are any images that I share today of any missing children, just be aware that those children at a later date could be recovered. And so if you're watching this webinar at a later time, and you need current information, always go to our website, missingkids.org, for the most current statistics and data, trends, and also the most current information regarding missing children. So there are a couple of reasons, just, the data being old, and then we don't want any old images of children who've since been recovered floating around is the reason we normally don't share that information. What we do share is a number of resources, and we're going to share some PDFs with you later towards the end of the presentation so that you'll have some resources that you can download and print. And just be aware that our website is very robust and there are a number of resources that you have access to at any time on that missingkids.org. What we're going to go through today are agenda topics. We're going to very quickly give you an introduction to NCMEC. We'll set the foundation by looking at what our legal definitions are and the boundaries that we operate within. I'm going to talk briefly about our children missing from care, which you'll hear me refer to as CMFC. And we've developed a program specific to that need at NCMEC. I'll share with you about the Tribal Fellowship and the outreach that we have with tribes. And then there's quite a bit of data and free resources. So it's going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hydrant, but we will get through it quickly. And then, as I said, we'll have some time for questions and discussion. So who we are. NCMEC was founded in 1984 by John and Reve Walsh. Their 6-year-old son, Adam, was abducted in 1981 and was subsequently found murdered 100 miles from his home. And his death and that of other missing children at about the same time prompted the Walshes to create a coordinated national response to missing children. What they found at that time in the early 80s was law enforcement truly did not have policies and protocol in place so that they would know how to handle missing children's reports. It was actually easier to get a response to a stolen vehicle because there were protocols for that. Whereas when Adam went missing, there were very few structures in place to guide law enforcement in how to handle missing children incidents. So from that was born the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So before he was the host of television shows like America's Most Wanted or In Pursuit, John Walsh was the father of a missing and murdered child. We are a nonprofit, non-governmental organization, so it's important to remember that we don't have a law enforcement role. We work closely with law enforcement and with child protective services agencies and with families, but we are not an investigating agency or a law enforcement agency. We're congressionally funded to operate 15 specific programs related to missing and exploited children, but our programs go way beyond that, and our resources are almost innumerable. And what we often tell our partners in law enforcement and other agencies is that if there is a resource that you need surrounding missing or exploited children, if we don't have it, we can probably get it. So we're not limited to just those 15 programs, but we are congressionally designated to perform those 15 programs. So just a note about our resources as well. Our resources are aimed in 3 different directions. We have a lot of resources that are specific to the law enforcement agency that is working on missing and exploited children. And then we have resources that are specific to the survivors and the family members of the missing and exploited children. And then we have resources that are specific to child welfare professionals. And we're going to talk about all of those today. I know we probably don't have law enforcement in our audience, but because we all work so closely with them in regards to these children, it's helpful for you to know all of the resources that we have in a comprehensive way. So our mission at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is threefold. First and foremost, we want to find missing children. We want to reduce the occurrence of child sexual exploitation, and most importantly, we want to prevent future victimization. Our motto is hope is why we are here. Hope is our motivating factor because we hope that all children that are missing are found safe and recovered, and we hope that they heal from their sexual exploitation, and we hope that we eventually work ourselves out of a job by preventing future victimization. But until that day comes, we're here to serve the most vulnerable population. We will very quickly, just for some housekeeping, go through the legal parameters and definitions that kind of define the boundaries that NCMEC operates within. First of all, we follow the federal guideline for the definition of a missing child. A missing child is any person under the age of 18 whose whereabouts are unknown to their legal guardian. So it does have to be the legal guardian, and the whereabouts have to be unknown. And what I mean by that is sometimes these children, especially if they're missing from foster care, they may be in an unauthorized place, but the legal guardian knows where they are. They may not have permission to be there, but if the whereabouts are known, that doesn't fall within our scope. So the whereabouts have to be unknown to the legal guardian. There are few circumstances, special circumstances, where we can get involved with missing young adults between the ages of 18 and 20. First of all, if there's a court order that extends custody over that young adult to either a state agency or a parent or legal guardian. So if there's still basically a ward of the court, we can get involved in those instances and provide resources there. Or if we have a special request from law enforcement, and we most often see those with missing young adults who maybe are on the autism spectrum or are functioning cognitively at a younger age than their biological age. So that's one of the special circumstances. And we've also had instances where young adults have gone missing from college campuses, and if foul play is suspected, oftentimes they will ask NCMEC to bring their resources in those as well. So it's a pretty narrow category, but there are some instances where we can go beyond the age of 18 to assist with those missing young adults. In 2014, there was some legislation passed that has had a big impact on child welfare organizations as well as NCMEC. So before the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act was passed in 2014, we knew that children in foster care were especially vulnerable. We knew that they went missing at a high rate, but what we also knew was there were not specific policies and protocols in place for that. And so what this legislation required was for states to immediately report those missing incidences to law enforcement and to NCMEC so that these children that were missing from foster care were located more quickly, and that the data surrounding that missing incident was gathered so that we know what those circumstances were surrounding that child's particular incident. The reason we want to gather that information is hopefully to prevent future occurrences of it. So this legislation established the reporting mandate for states that they have a certain amount of time that they have to have that reported to law enforcement and to NCMEC. When it went into effect in 2014, there was a timeline established. Within 1 year, the states had to have their policy and protocol in place. And by the fall of 2016, the reporting mandate went into effect. In addition to that, there's a piece of legislation that went through in 2022. You'll hear it referred to as the TVPRA. And what this did, because we know that state child welfare information is some of the most highly confidential information that there is. So this legislation addresses the sharing of information with law enforcement and with NCMEC so that those photos and all of that descriptive information is allowable to be shared with us so that we can support the recovery of that missing youth. Other than medical records, I don't know anyone who's more stringent with their records than child welfare professionals as far as levels of confidentiality. So this is a piece of legislation that addressed that issue. In addition to our outreach with child welfare professionals to address children missing from care, NCMEC is also dedicated to extending their outreach to tribes across the nation. And all of the tribal outreach falls under the umbrella of the Missing Children Division here at NCMEC. And the reason for the specific outreach to tribes, NCMEC has a deep respect for tribal nations and an understanding that as sovereign nations, our jurisdictional issues and our sovereignty create a unique government-to-government relationship. And so in respect to that, NCMEC wanted to extend that partnership to tribes because the mandates that states are required to adhere to because of that legislation we talked about cannot be imposed on tribes. We're sovereign nations, so we can't be mandated to report those missing children to NCMEC. So in order to gather that information, NCMEC has started partnerships with the tribes in order to ask them to voluntarily submit that information. There's a number of reasons for that. First and foremost, we want to assist in recovering those missing Native children. That's at the end of the day, what we're here for is to recover missing children. And we know that right now, because tribes are not mandated to report the missing children or the children missing from care to us, we know we're not fully getting an accurate picture of the number of Native children that are missing at this time. So we want to have more information so that we can track the trends that we're seeing. We have a better understanding of the endangerments that the Native children are facing. And then also, when you have that data available, we know that for funding opportunities, funds go where there is an identified problem. So if you can identify that there's a situation that needs to be addressed, you're more likely to have the resources and the funding to put safety measures in place. So if we capture better data regarding missing Native children, then we're able to better respond to them and say, this is a crisis, and here are the numbers to show that it's a crisis. So NCMEC has, I've been very impressed with the amount of tribal outreach and the amount of respect that NCMEC has internally for tribes. Part of that outreach also was the establishment of the Tribal Fellowship Program. It was established in 2021, and it was just part of the outreach because what my role is as Tribal Fellow externally to NCMEC is to educate tribes to make that network connection and let them know what we have available to them in those efforts to recover missing Native children. Internally to NCMEC, I serve as a strategic advisor. So if there's anything internally to our staff that requires a tribal voice at the table, I serve in that capacity as well. And so the fellowship was set up as a 100% remote, and it was set up as an annual appointment so that each year there would be a different tribal fellow. So I was honored when they asked me to extend mine for a second year, just because of the momentum that we already had going. But it was created for a one-year appointment intentionally so that there was diversity, tribal diversity, professional diversity, geographic diversity. The initial tribal fellow was a man by the name of Mark Cooley, and he was a retired law enforcement officer in Arizona, and he was of Navajo and Hopi descent. And of course, I'm career in social work and child protective services. I'm Choctaw and I'm from Oklahoma. So you can see how our perspectives will be different, but we both have perspectives that NCMEC values, and they want those voices at the table. The end goal 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, is that NCMEC would have this strong network of Indigenous friends to NCMEC that they can lean on for those tribal voices, and they want those tribal voices at the table. So just a little bit about the Tribal Fellowship and how I serve internally and externally to NCMEC. Another part of our outreach to tribes is a dedicated portion of our website, missingkids.org, that is specific to the Native children. So all of the statistics that are found here, all of the resources and the downloadable resources are going to be specific to tribes here. And we're expanding, like I said, we have a very robust website, and we're going to continue to expand this as well so that there's more resources and more information always available to tribes. There will also be announcements here, including later this fall, the announcement for the Tribal Fellowship for 2025, when they start seeking applicants for the next Tribal Fellow. So we do have a dedicated portion of our website just for Native issues. All right, and we're going to look at some data. Again, one of the things that we do at NCMEC is collect a lot of information, and we turn that into reports. We turn that into a lot of statistical slides, but we're ever mindful at NCMEC that these numbers represent actual children, and every one of them is important to us, and we want to recover every one of them. So while it seems like there's a lot of data that I'm going to throw at you, please understand that we understand that these are children's lives that we're talking about. And so we don't ever want to lose sight of the importance behind these numbers. In 2023, NCMEC intaked approximately 29,000, just under 29,000 calls total for the year. And you can see from this information slide here that overwhelmingly, almost 93% of those were endangered runaways. There are occasionally the non-family abduction, which, you know, Hollywood would have us believe is the creepy guy in the white van. Those are actually very rare. It does happen, but it's a very small portion of what we see at NCMEC. The endangered runaways is the primary demographic that we're serving at this time. If you break it down by race and ethnicity, the Black, Hispanic, and white make up the majority of those endangered runaways. And this is going to be, let's see here, this is going to be a 5-year study. So this is from January 1, 2019 to the end of 2023. This is our most current data. So if you look at that and see that those three groups make up the largest portion, and that Native Americans make up only 1.4%, that seems like it's a really small piece of the pie. Like that's not an overrepresentation. But the reason that we feel like Native American children are still overrepresented in our endangered runaway intakes is shown on the next slide. So if you look at just the U.S. Census Bureau alone, Native Americans make up 1% of the overall population. We make up 2% of the foster care population, according to AFGAR statistics. So that's immediately an overrepresentation there for only making up 1% of the overall population. And then again, natives make up 1.4% of the endangered runaway reports that we received here at NCMEC. So it's a little bit of comparing apples to oranges. But if you look at these three populations side by side, you'll see why we're concerned with the overrepresentation of Native children. This is a 10-year snapshot of Native American data. During this 10-year period, 3,393 children were reported missing to NCMEC that were reported to be Native American children. And over half of those were missing from a foster home situation. The top endangerments that we saw will come as no surprise to this audience that if they had run away before, if they had previous missing incidents, that's one of our top indicators. But other endangerments that we saw were drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, especially if it was untreated, suicidal thoughts, and self-harm. Those were the top 5 endangerments we saw across the board, but also in specifically the Native American child population. Fortunately, over this 10-year period, 99% of those cases were considered resolved by NCMEC. And one of the things about the cases that we carry on these children, we don't close our case until there's verified contact. So even if law enforcement closes their case, or even if the child ages out of the foster care system and so the child welfare professional closes their case, our case remains open until there's verified contact. And so even if it's years down the road and that person is now an adult, until we've had verified contact, we don't consider our case resolved. So a little bit about the children missing from care data. We'll go back and look at these endangered runaway intakes again. The biological family made up only 20% of our endangered runaway. Overwhelmingly, the majority of the endangered runaways that we intaked at NCMEC were from the foster care population, 76.4. So we consider it a crisis. We know that this is a huge problem. And so the information that we're gathering and the resources that we're producing are all aimed at reducing these numbers. So how do you report to NCMEC? We know that for state professionals, it's a mandate. And for tribal professionals, you know, we're begging you to make these reports to us so that we can get a better understanding of what the crisis really is and how we can help. So how do you report to NCMEC? The most important thing you can take away today from the presentation is 1-800-THE-LOST. If you don't remember anything else, remember that number, 1-800-THE-LOST. All of our information, all of our resources, everything that you need can be initiated just by making that phone call. We do also have a web reporting form that child welfare agencies can use. And there's a little bit of work on the front end, just setting up that account so that you have a login and a password that you can use. But once, and it's very quick and it walks you right through it. But once that initial account is set up, then you can go on and just use the web form each time you need to report to us. Because we know sometimes there's multiple reports on one child. If, you know, we get a child that repeatedly runs, or depending on your caseload, you may have multiple children at the same time that have run. So the web reporting form just makes it easier for the professionals who need to make those mandated reports. Who can report to NCMEC? The majority of our reports come from either parents or from law enforcement. We do allow third parties to make reports to NCMEC. And when I say third party, I don't mean the child welfare worker, just, you know, anyone other than child welfare worker as a third party. They still have to give us the parent legal guardian information and contact information. We will still take their reports, but primarily it's going to be parents, legal guardians, law enforcement, or child welfare making those reports to NCMEC. If anyone has information, any sort of tips, leads, anything at all that could help us add to the information regarding a missing child, we encourage everyone to call 1-800-THE-LOST and just give us that information. It doesn't have to be a report. If the report's already been made, but someone has a piece of information they need to share, call that number. Because we know that sometimes it's the tiniest little detail that helps us recover a child. So even if you think it may not be that important, trust me, we want that information. When NCMEC takes these reports, we're going to get caseworker information and contact, but we're also going to get supervisor information and contact. We know that caseload assignments change rapidly in child welfare. We also know that turnover is a huge problem. So we have decided to take both the caseworker and supervisor information. We want as much information as we can get about the biological family, and then also about that police report. So we want that NCIC number. We want to know what law enforcement agency is the lead agency and who that assigned officer is. Basically, we're going to gather all the information that we can. If you have, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have a child who runs repeatedly, and sometimes they'll run the same day, sometimes you can recover them, return them to whatever their placement situation is, and within hours, sometimes within minutes, they run again. Each one of those incidents is a separate report to NCMEC, and it seems like it's creating extra work, but the reasoning behind that is each time that we gather specific information about a running incident, we use that for future incidents to help locate the child more quickly, and it gives us clues to where we might locate them or who we might locate them with. So each separate time that a child goes missing, we do consider that a separate report. Once that report is made to NCMEC, a little bit about what to expect. The information comes in through our call center. Once the call center intakes it, gets all the information they can. If it is accepted as a NCMEC case, it will be assigned to a case manager. And that case manager is responsible for initiating all of those resources that I'm going to tell you about. And so our case managers are on call 24/7. If the case manager assigned to your particular child is not available, a case manager will answer the phone. There will always be someone available to you. That case manager is going to be responsible for those 3 sets of resources that I told you about, making sure law enforcement has our law enforcement resources, making sure the child and the family members have our family resources, and then making sure the child welfare professional has our resources as well. So they will initiate all of those resources once it's assigned to them. They're going to start creating those missing posters. They're going to share all of the information and leads that we get with the law enforcement. And that's one thing that I need to stress is that when we get tips and leads in NCMEC regarding a child, we only share information with the law enforcement officer. We won't give that back to the caseworker or to a family member, simply because we don't want to jeopardize a law enforcement investigation. So we can take information and we will take all of the leads and tips that we get and funnel those through the law enforcement agency. We can't share them with you, although I think sometimes the case managers will say, hey, you might want to contact Deputy Smith. He might have some information that you want to be aware of. So we can't give it to you, but we can kind of give you a nudge in the right direction that law enforcement officer has some information that they might be willing to share with you. The case manager is going to be gathering information, sending out those referrals, coordinating all of our response teams and all of our resources. And that includes critical cases as well as our long-term missing cases. So our mission, like I said, is threefold. The first part of our mission was finding missing children. So let's talk a little bit about some of the resources for finding missing children. Again, 1-800-THE-LOST, our call center starts the ball rolling on all of our resources. We take more than 350 calls a day. Since 1984, we've taken over 5 million calls, but all of our information gathering starts here with the call center. Another resource that we have available is if we're contacted and a missing child has been recovered far away from home and the family doesn't have any resources to reunite with the child, they literally can't afford to go pick the child up. We have partnerships with Greyhound, Amtrak, American Airlines, and we have assistance available to reunite the family so that an adult, it's going to be one of our family advocates, will go accompany that child and bring them back to reunite them with their family. So we have transportation assistance available. One of the first things we're going to do is create a missing poster when these children go missing. It's why it's so important that we have a good image of the child. We have some good photos to choose from. And we recently revamped our missing posters, and we took out some of the information that's not as urgent. And what we did was make the image bigger, because we found that the actual image of the child leads to the recovery more so than eye color or height or weight. And so some of that information, which is still available, it's just not taking up as much room on the missing poster. So we recently revamped those. We have a QR code that takes you directly to our missing posters. But that's one of the first resources that we're going to enact when we get these referrals on these missing kids, is get that poster created and get it sent out. We have over 210 nationwide partners, so that when we send out a missing poster, we can get it on billboards. We can get it in over 4,900 Walmart stores. We can get it on those little screens on the gas pumps, gas station TV. We get it on our social media. So immediately we start saturating all of our partners with the missing poster and get that image out there as quickly as possible. We're able to geo-target those posters. So if there's a child goes missing, let's say in the Four Corners, we can make a circle around the Four Corners area and geo-target that missing poster. Or if there's a stretch of highway, a road, a corridor, and we need to target that particular stretch of highway, we can do that as well. So we have capabilities for geo-targeting on those missing posters. One of the things we hope to do in the future, we don't have the capability yet, but it's one of our goals, is if a child goes missing anywhere in the country, and we know that that child is a tribal member, that we geo-target the area where the child went missing, but we also are able to notify the tribe as well. So if a Choctaw child goes missing in Florida, we're still able to notify their tribe in Oklahoma that the child's missing over here, but it's one of your tribal members and you need to be aware. So that's one of the things that we hope to do in the future in our tribal outreach. Another resource we have is Amber Alerts. We're a secondary distributor of Amber Alerts. Every state has its own set of guidelines for issuing Amber Alerts, but when they go out, we receive those at the call center, and then we redistribute them to all of our national partners. So for example, one of our national partners is Motel 6. And we know that in child sex trafficking, hotels and motels are often involved in that trade. And so they've signed up to be one of our national partners, so that when we distribute an Amber Alert secondary, they receive it, they're able to get it to their staff, and their staff are able to watch for the car, the vehicle, all of the descriptors that go out in those Amber Alerts. Our national partners are made aware of those as well. One of my favorite resources that we have, and this is for the law enforcement resources, is our Team Adam consultants. So we have this small army of retired law enforcement officers. Every year we take a new class of 25, we call them TACs, because again, we love our acronyms. So we have a new class of 25 TACs every year that we add to this resource. They're scattered throughout the country, and what they do is deploy. So when there's a critical missing incident regarding a child, we can send a Team Adam consultant to that law enforcement agency. Our goal is to have them there within the first 4 hours. So when these guys, when they get a call saying that they're needed somewhere, our expectation of them is that they're on the road within 30 minutes. But they provide critical case assistance. All of them have specialties and all of them have years of experience in working missing persons cases. So it's an extra set of eyes. It's an extra pair of hands, just helping and guiding the law enforcement agency. Again, we don't work in a law enforcement role. These are retired law enforcement officials, but they're not there to take over a case. There's no threat to sovereignty. There's no threat to jurisdiction. We're just there to be a support. We will fly in under the radar, fly out under the radar. We just want to be there to offer our expertise. These individuals have all sorts of specialized training. We have canine handlers that are in our TACs. We have TACs who are landfill search specialists, to the point that one of our guys is actually the one who wrote the algorithm that predicts where in the landfill that human remains might be located. So we have trackers, we have individuals who have specialty training in actually tracking people on land. So just a number of experiences that would be helpful for the law enforcement agency that's looking for this child. And again, this resource is free. We'll bring it to you for free. We just want to be there to help. They also offer long-term case assistance on what we refer to as cold cases. So this is just a free resource for the law enforcement agency. We partner with federal liaisons. We're not law enforcement, but we have a number of agencies that we partner with so that we have access to the military records. We have access to their sex offender tracking, to their crime labs. There's all of these partners that we can lean on. And when they're needed in a critical case, we don't have to cold call or try to send an email to a general inbox and wait for someone to get back to us. All of these federal partners are located in our headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. So if we need their assistance, all we have to do is walk down the hallway. They're in our office. So that's one of the most important resources we have is instant access to all of these partners, Department of Defense, FBI, Homeland Security, just wonderful partners to have. And we have immediate access to them. We're not trying to track down somebody. Our contacts are in-house. We have a number of forensic resources available to the law enforcement officers. So just be aware of it. Again, I know that this is not a law enforcement audience, but because we all work so closely together in these cases regarding missing children, just be aware so that you can share the information with others around you, that if it's DNA testing, any sort of forensic genealogy, pollen and soil analysis, for all of the cool forensic stuff that you see on all the true crime shows, we have access to it for free. If it's not completely free, it's very reduced, but we will get these resources and bring them to the law enforcement agency. We're able to do that because we partner with a number of national partners, Bode Technology, Parabon, Astria. All of these are our national partners that we lean on so that we can bring you these free resources. So again, though you're not acting in a law enforcement role, just be aware of it in case you need to share the information with your law enforcement partners. Age progressions is one of our strongest tools for locating long-term missing. For children that are missing, age progressions usually happen about every 2 years as the skull structure is changing. Once they reach adulthood after the age of 18, we generally are only going to update these every 5 years or so because we know that the facial structure is in place. But this has been a very helpful tool in locating quite a few. We have a team of analytical support. So one of the things that we do is open record searches. We have access beyond what the general public can search as far as LexisNexis, all of the major social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of these partners that you see here, we have access to information so that we can spend our time looking for proof of life of this child. If we know they have social media accounts, we can search those. We can do all of these searches that's very time consuming. And I know with current child welfare caseloads, as well as law enforcement caseloads, most caseworkers and most detectives don't have time to sit for hours and hours and hours trying to find this kid online. But we have that time. We have a whole team who's willing to do all of that search for you and then get you the information about what they were able to locate. So, I mean, you can see here a number of national partners that we can lean on in order to get that information to you. And one of the things that I often tell social workers is if you have a missing child, a child that's missing from care, at some point in time, someone's going to have to stand in front of a judge and give either reasonable or active efforts that are being made to locate the child. So why not use all of these resources that are at your fingertips at NCMEC and say, we're partnering with NCMEC. Here's all of the things that we're doing. Here's all of the ways that we're searching for this kid. And let us take some of that burden off of you. So just a reminder for your efforts, your active efforts to locate these kids. There's a lot going on in the background at NCMEC that we can help you with. And our data analytics team can take all of the information that we gather and we can turn that into reports. So we take all these public records. these sex offender searches, and we can turn these into reports and information and feed all of that back to the law enforcement official in order to aid that investigation. We've also helped create family trees, timelines, and then mapping. Those are usually more helpful in court situations when you need to present evidence, but we do have the capability of doing that. Our tribal outreach also, we currently have a pilot program with Choctaw Nation, and what we've done is create an analytical report that is specific to a tribe. So in the future, when it comes out of pilot status, tribes will be able to go onto our website and sign up for a quarterly report from NCMEC. And what we will do is pull the data that we have for their tribes specifically for each quarter, and then start generating those reports regularly for them. And it will be only the information that we have regarding their tribe, if any. There will be some tribes that we won't have any interaction with, but we're tracking the number of cases that were referred to us from that tribe, the child's age, their gender, what sort of circumstances as far as the endangerments, who they were with, what that person's relationship was to them, how many miles from home were they when they were found. So it's a very in-depth report. I think it's about 6 or 8 pages in total, but we were able to generate these and get them out specific to each tribe. And we only share that information with that tribe. So when Choctaw receives a report, we don't share it widely with anyone else. It goes specifically to our contact sources at Choctaw Nation. We have specific resources and experts for children who are on the autism spectrum. So just be aware that those searches are very different, especially regarding bodies of water. So if you have a child missing on your caseload who's on the spectrum, let us know because we have resources geared specifically for that population. The resources that we have specific to the survivors and the family members of missing and exploited children, we have a network of mental health professionals that we're able to rely on nationwide, who provide mental health services either for free or reduced fee. We're able to immediately surround moms, dads, aunts, uncles, siblings, and hopefully the survivor with all of these services. As soon as we get a report, the case manager will also notify families, our family advocacy division. We have assistance, referring people to legal assistance. We have lawyers at NCMEC, although we don't offer legal counsel or legal advice. We can kind of give you what your options are and point you in the right direction. We do crisis intervention. We try to make sure that the family members are connected to their community resources. So we try to get specific to their community. And that's especially important for tribal communities because those healing resources look different for tribes. And then we have what we call Team Hope, which is our peer-based support. And this is our group of support that are made up of family members and survivors with lived experience. So if a mom and dad are living every parent's worst nightmare and their child is missing, we're able to immediately connect them to someone from Team Hope who has walked the walk and is able to talk with them and support them through this critical incident with them. So we do have peer-based support, and it's important to us, not only for our mental health professionals that are in our network, but also our Team Hope, that if you or someone you know is Native American and either serves as a mental health professional or has unfortunately had a missing or exploited child and want to be added to our resource network, we would love that because we want to be culturally sensitive. We want to offer information that's specific to tribes. So just be aware that, we'd love to add you to our network. So those are all the things that our family advocacy division provides. Child sex traffic recovery services team is specific for child welfare professionals. And so these services are going to be aimed at the recovery of a child that if there's suspected sex trafficking, because what we want to do is find out the information surrounding those events and hopefully reduce their running behaviors and all of those endangerments that surround that. So we do have a specific team that works with child welfare professionals. So if you believe that you have a child that's missing from care, you're concerned that there's some child sex trafficking going on, we have a specific team aimed just at that. And as part of that recovery planning, they're going to visit with that child welfare professional, talk about, how to mitigate the challenges, what's that recovery going to look like, and help connect you with local resources, national resources, and do everything that we can so that when that child is recovered, we can hopefully break that cycle. And our child sex trafficking, our CST recovery team is broken up by region. That's really not anything that you need to be worried about, because once you make that referral, we're going to get you in touch with the right person for your area. But just know that those resources are available specific to child welfare professionals. The data shows us that in 2022, we had over 19,000 reports that were related to child sex trafficking, and it's on the increase. We know that the youth who run away are especially susceptible to the sex trafficking. We're trying to change the language at NCMEC to make sure that the term child prostitute or teen prostitute is no longer the language that we use, but we call it what it is. They're child sex trafficking victims. Calling them a prostitute indicates or infers that there's some choice being made there, or that they can consent. Legally and developmentally, they can't consent to that. So we're going to call it what it is. They're child sex trafficking victims. So we're also working to change the language surrounding that. The second part of our mission statement is reducing child sexual exploitation. That can be child sexual abuse materials. We call it CSAM. Again, it used to be called child pornography, but that implies that there's some sort of consent or choice there. So we call it child sexual abuse materials because it is a form of sexual abuse. Sexual exploitation can also be the online enticement. It can be sex trafficking, sex tourism, any third-party sexual molestation. It can be a number of things. But the second part of our mission is to reduce child sexual exploitation. Unfortunately, we've been seeing a rise in these reports over the last few years. You can see overall our cyber tip line reports have grown, have almost doubled in the last 5 years. The cyber tip line is one of our two biggest tools in reducing child sexual exploitation is this tip line where we funnel information about these online incidents. And then the other part of our child sexual exploitation reduction efforts are our child victim identification program, CVIP. And these individuals at NCMEC have the very sad task of looking at photos that have been reported to us and trying to identify who those victims are. They've been successful in over 19,000 of those. But they do work in a very secure area of the building because what they're tasked with doing is accepting those images that are reported to us and then trying to identify and locate who that child victim is. Since 2002, we've had over 318 million images and videos that have been reported to us. And so we have a team that is dedicated to trying to identify who those victims are and determining whether they're safe or not. One of the questions we get asked most is, what is the top threat that faces children online? What do I need to look for on my child's phone? What app do I need to delete from my child's phone? And the unfortunate answer is access is really the top threat. We all know that predators will use any platform and any app to try to lure these children. And so it's not any particular app that's the problem, it's unrestricted access. And the last part of our mission is preventing future victimization. So we gather all this data, we track all these trends, what do we do with it? Well, at NCMEC, we try to turn that into usable educational resources. We create content and format aimed at reducing these trends. And so prevention education is a huge part of our website. We have a lot of resources that are available there. We have Net Smarts, we have Kid Smarts, and the difference between those two. So Kid Smarts is going to be grades K through 5. And those are for real life interactions and interpersonal communications, and it's safety training for that versus our Net Smarts, which is our safety training for K through 12, which is for the online safety. So we have real world safety and we have online safety. Ton of resources available on our website there. We have it in the format of games. We have activity guides, tip sheets, interactive videos, presentations. So we take the educational format and we are able to provide that in a variety of vehicles, and we break it down by age so that it's developmentally appropriate. And we also have resources available for parents and community members to help guide those conversations, because some of these conversations are very difficult to have. We have some that are specifically for teens and adolescents to help empower them, help them understand about choices, consequences, and what a healthy relationship really looks like, so that they'll be able to identify someone who's trying to exploit them. Our sexting resource is available for our adolescents who've made a decision to either send an online photo or any form of texting or sexting, and we're able to help remove that from the websites. What we do is partner with all of the major social media platforms, and we have a tool called Take It Down. So if a child has sexual or explicit content out there, they're able to go on our website here, and we don't want the actual image that they're worried about. We don't need that. What we need is the hash data from that image. So they're able to upload that hash data information, and then we will partner with all of the platforms. And again, I mentioned Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all of those major partners that we have are going to take that hash data, and if it's on their platform, they will remove that image for that child. So a teenager can actually go to our website, self-report that they have explicit images out there, and then we will work with them to help get that scrubbed off the internet. So that's one of our probably one of the biggest tools that we have right now, as far as interest and what we see our child welfare professionals requesting. But we also have videos, discussion guides, all of those things available as well. But we do have an interactive portion where the child can self-report any images that they need help removing. And again, it's called Take It Down. So I see we're quickly running out of time. And so I'm going to just suggest that you go on our website, go to NCMEC Connect. We have a lot of professional trainings there. So for professional development, you'll find that under the portion called NCMEC Connect. And we're constantly updating that as well, and partnering with other community agencies and nonprofits in order to find opportunities to share our resources. What can you do? Report any missing children. If you suspect child sex trafficking or child sexual exploitation, report that to us as well. Share our free resources. Like I said, you kind of got a rapid fire version of it today, but we're going to drop some resources in the chat. And then you can find a lot of those on our social media and our website as well. You can sign up for our voluntary add-on program to get notifications. There's a URL there in this slide that you can see that if you click on that URL, it's going to bring up a video that is specific to your area. So it's a geo-targeted video that will come up. It will show you only missing children in your area. There's a number of things that you can do to help as well. But first and foremost, bottom line, report those to NCMEC, 1-800-THE-LOST. Remember that, commit that to memory, and share that information with others around you. So very quickly, I'm going to take a minute to see if we have any questions that I can answer. And I'm going to share my contact information as well. I've shared here my own email at NCMEC. And then also the tribal fellow at ncmec.org is an email that will follow this position. So after I'm no longer the tribal fellow, whoever is next in this position will be able to answer that email. So that one will, that's the official tribal fellow email. Well, if there are no questions, I do thank you very much for your time and attention. I am going to be co-presenting this information in an extended format with our Children Missing from Care Program Manager at NCWA. So if any of you are in Seattle in April, we'd love to have you and join our session, and we'll go more in depth into our efforts in regards to the children missing from care. All right. Thank you all very much.